The night was quiet, almost too quiet. The twin moons of the distant planet hung low in the sky, their pale light shimmering across the endless waves that lapped against the jagged cliffs. The wind whispered through the tall grasses, carrying the salty scent of the sea. And the villagers of Kale's small coastal settlement had long since retired to their homes, leaving only the watchful cliffs empty beneath the moonlight. But something unusual broke the stillness, a glowing light drifting over the horizon. At first, it seemed like a mirage, a trick of the eyes. The light was soft, almost gentle, but it moved steadily, approaching the shore in silence. The villagers who had ventured out onto the cliffs squinted and whispered among themselves. "It cannot be a ship," one said. "No vessel this old could still hold such fire." Another shook his head, his eyes wide with unease. Yet the light did not dim, did not flicker. It came closer, drawing a long, silent shadow across the water. Kale, a young engineer known in the village for his curiosity, had been watching from the cliff's edge. His heart beat faster with excitement. Most of the villagers were afraid. They murmured of ghosts, of ancient curses, and of the sea claiming what was not meant for them. But Kale could not tear his eyes away. There was something remarkable about that light, something that called to him in a way that fear could not overpower. The vessel drifted closer, the hull dark and weathered. Yet the lanterns along its sides glowed brightly, casting golden reflections on the waves. It was unlike anything Kale had ever seen. Its shape was long and narrow, with high masts reaching skyward, as if trying to touch the twin moons. The wood, though cracked and worn, carried an elegance that suggested care, purpose, and a story long forgotten. The lanterns did not sway as the ship moved. They burned steady and true, as if the vessel itself breathed life into them. Kale felt a pull he could not explain. He had built machines, repaired engines, and dreamed of exploring beyond the cliffs. But nothing had prepared him for this. Without a second thought, he ran toward the shore, his boots crunching over rocks and sand. The villagers shouted after him, warning him to stay away, but their voices were lost to the wind. Kale reached the water's edge just as the ship grounded itself upon the sand. The waves whispered against the hull, and the vessel shivered slightly, as if acknowledging his presence. Carefully, Kale stepped onto the gangplank that had mysteriously extended from the ship. It felt solid under his feet, and the lanterns seemed to brighten as he moved. Inside, the ship smelled of old wood, salt, and something metallic, like iron warmed by the sun. The corridors were lined with panels and doors, their surfaces engraved with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the lantern light. Kale touched one, and it hummed softly, sending a vibration up his arm. As he moved deeper into the ship, he discovered signs that someone or something had lived here long ago. Small tools lay scattered across a table, though untouched by time. Books with pages brittle and cracked rested on shelves, their language alien but patterns familiar to Kale in some instinctive way. The air was cool, but not stale. It seemed to pulse with energy, as though the vessel itself was alive. Then came a sound. At first, it was faint, like a whisper carried on the wind. Kale froze, holding his breath. "Hello?" he called softly, his voice echoing through the empty corridors. There was no reply. The sound grew slightly louder, more deliberate, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was not a voice of flesh and blood, but of memory and thought. It spoke in tones Kale could understand, though the words were strange. "Welcome, traveler," it said. "You have found what was lost." Kale's pulse quickened. He had heard of ships that drifted in from the void, but this was different. This was alive, aware, and it had chosen to speak to him. He stepped forward, following the sound as it guided him toward the heart of the ship. The corridors opened into a large chamber filled with consoles, screens, and holographic maps of stars, planets, and systems that Kale did not recognize. The walls shimmered faintly, displaying constellations that were alien yet strangely beautiful. He approached the central console and placed his hands upon it. The ship responded immediately. Panels slid open, revealing compartments filled with devices that glowed with energy. Tools and instruments hovered in midair, spinning slowly, as if waiting to be used. KL could hardly contain his wonder. Every mechanism was advanced beyond anything humans had ever built, yet it felt familiar. Some instinct within him seemed to understand the functions of the ship, guiding his hands as he explored. As he studied the instruments, a sudden movement caught his eye. Drones, small and sleek, emerged from hidden panels. They hovered silently at first, then approached Kale with precise, calculated motions. Their metallic bodies glimmered under the lantern light, and their single, glowing eye fixed upon him. Kale stepped back instinctively, heart racing. He was unarmed, unprepared, but he could not flee. The ship had brought him here, and now it seemed to expect something from him. The drones circled him, scanning, analyzing. Kale's mind raced. He noticed patterns in their movements, small gaps in their coordination. With careful movements, he mimicked the ship's symbols on a nearby console, sending a pulse through the system. The drones hesitated, their motions faltering, and Kale realized he had found their control. Slowly, he guided them back into their compartments, deactivating them without harm. Breathing heavily, Kale stepped into the central chamber again. He realized that the ship was testing him, gauging his intelligence, his creativity, and his courage. It was not a threat, it was a challenge. A message from a civilization long gone, offering its knowledge to those who could understand. And Kale, with all his curiosity and determination, was ready to accept it. Hours passed like minutes as he explored further. He discovered logs of journeys to distant stars, recordings of worlds now forgotten, and archives of civilizations that had risen and fallen. The lanterns along the ship's hull continued to glow, casting golden reflections into the chamber, as if the vessel itself celebrated his discovery. By the time the twin moons reached their zenith, Kale understood something profound. This was no ordinary ship. It was a repository of knowledge, a vessel designed to carry the legacy of a civilization across the cosmos, and it had chosen him to awaken it. He could feel the energy of the ship resonating with his own spirit, a silent acknowledgement of human curiosity, ingenuity, and bravery. The sound of the wind outside brought him back to reality. He realized that he was not alone in this experience. The villagers would see the glow, would hear whispers of the ship's arrival, and would be afraid. But Kale also knew that fear was only the beginning. Humans had survived against impossible odds before. They had explored, built, and triumphed where others had failed. This vessel was another challenge, another adventure, and Kale was ready to rise to it. He took one last look around the central chamber, tracing his fingers along the consoles, feeling the hum of power beneath his touch. The lanterns outside burned brighter, as if acknowledging his decision. Kale smiled, a mixture of awe and determination. This night had changed everything. The old vessel had drifted ashore, bringing with it mystery, history, and a chance for humans to prove their ingenuity once again. And Kale knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning of a journey that would take him far beyond the cliffs, beyond the seas, and into the stars themselves. The waves continued to lap against the hull. The wind whispered through the rigging, and the lanterns of the old vessel glowed on, guiding him toward a destiny he could scarcely imagine but was eager to embrace. And somewhere, deep within the ship, the soft hum of life persisted, waiting for the next move, the next discovery, and the next proof that humans were capable of rising to challenges that no one else could face. The night stretched on, silent and vast, yet filled with the promise of adventure. Kale stood at the heart of the old vessel, feeling its pulse, feeling the connection between his own ingenuity and the legacy of the stars. And as the first hint of dawn colored the horizon, he realized that the glowing lanterns were not just lights, they were a beacon, a call to humanity, to step forward, to explore, and to prove that courage, curiosity, and intellect were more powerful than any force the universe could throw in their path. The morning sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting pale, golden light across the cliffs and the gentle waves that lapped at the shore. The villagers had gathered at a safe distance, their eyes fixed on the old vessel still resting on the sand, its lanterns glowing faintly as if holding on to the memory of the night. Most spoke in whispers, their voices carrying awe, fear, and curiosity all at once. But Cale did not notice them. He had barely slept, spending the night exploring every corridor and chamber the ship had opened to him. Inside the central chamber, Cale stood before a massive holographic map projected from the main console. Stars twinkled in three-dimensional space, planets spinning slowly on invisible axes, and streams of energy traced paths between them. The map was alive, shifting subtly as Cale moved, responding to his touch. His fingers hovered over a cluster of stars, unsure what they represented, yet feeling a strange connection to the patterns. The voice that had welcomed him the night before whispered again in his mind, soft and calm, guiding him toward understanding. "Study, learn, discover," it said, though the words were more feeling than sound. "The knowledge of a civilization waits for those who are patient and clever." Cale leaned closer, tracing the lines of energy with careful fingers. He realized that the map did not only show stars, it displayed travel routes, resource points, and signals from other ships. Some active, some long, silent. His mind raced as he considered the possibilities. This was not just a vessel. It was a library, a command center, a guide to the universe itself, and it had chosen him to awaken its secrets. Determined, Cale moved to another console, pressing buttons and sliding panels, experimenting cautiously. As he activated systems, he discovered more about the ship's capabilities. A storage compartment opened to reveal tools and devices far beyond human design. Small machines floated in midair, spinning and adjusting as if anticipating his touch. A set of portable energy units glowed softly, waiting to be used. Cale realized that the ship was teaching him, slowly, step by step, how to interact with its systems. Hours passed as Cale explored. He found sleeping chambers, observation decks, and a strange room filled with books and holographic archives. The texts were written in an alien language, but the symbols resonated with him, as if his mind instinctively understood some of the logic behind them. He could not read the words fully, but he could follow the patterns, recognize sequences, and deduce functions. Each discovery filled him with wonder and a growing sense of purpose. Then, without warning, a low hum filled the corridors. Cale froze, listening. It was not the gentle pulse of the ship he had felt before. It was insistent, mechanical, and alive. From hidden panels, small drones emerged once again, sleek and metallic, their glowing eyes fixed on him. He had thought he had deactivated them the previous night, but these were new, programmed for a different task. Cale stepped back, heart racing. The drones moved with precision, scanning and mapping the room. But this time, they did not attack immediately. Instead, they surrounded him, their movement deliberate, almost cautious. Cale realized they were testing him again, measuring his reactions. His mind raced, thinking quickly. He remembered the symbols he had touched last night, the pulses he had sent through the consoles. Slowly, deliberately, he mirrored the patterns, sending a wave of light across the room. The drones hesitated. Their movements faltered. Cale took a deep breath and continued, adjusting the pulses, communicating with them in a silent, electric language that only the ship and its machines could understand. Finally, the drones stopped, hovering silently, retracting back into their compartments. Cale exhaled, his body trembling from relief and excitement. He had survived the test once again, proving that human creativity and intuition were enough to meet the ship's challenges. As he continued to explore, Cale discovered a hidden chamber deep within the vessel. Its doors slid open to reveal a console with a control panel unlike any other. It displayed a fleet of small, dormant drones, each capable of flight and equipped with sensors and tools. Cale realized these were not merely defense mechanisms, they were helpers, extensions of the ship itself. But to activate them, He would need to understand the alien logic fully. Kale worked methodically, tracing connections, watching how energy flowed through the panels. He experimented carefully, making small adjustments, observing responses. The ship seemed to guide him, pulsing softly as if encouraging him forward. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky outside. Kale lost track of time entirely. Immersed in the challenge, driven by curiosity and determination, by mid-afternoon, he succeeded. The drones stirred, lights blinking as they powered on, responding to Kale's commands. They hovered around him, waiting for instructions. A surge of pride filled Kale. He had done it. He had learned the ship's language, if only in part, and had earned its trust. The vessel was no longer a mystery entirely. It was becoming a partner in his exploration. But just as he began to feel triumph, the ship shuddered. A vibration ran through the hull, low and deep. Kale stumbled, glancing around in alarm. The ship's lanterns flickered, and a soft alarm echoed through the corridors. On the main console, red symbols appeared, unfamiliar and urgent. The voice whispered again, this time tense, cautious, alert, intruder, threat detected. Kale's heart pounded. He scanned the ship, trying to understand. The drones moved into defensive positions automatically, wings and sensors poised. He realized that activating the vessel had sent a signal into space, a call that could not go unnoticed. The ship itself was alerting him to danger approaching from beyond the atmosphere. Quickly, Kale moved to the observation deck. Through the thick, reinforced windows, he could see movement in orbit. Small, dark shapes approached, moving with speed and precision. Alien vessels, unknown and hostile, were coming toward the ship. Kale's mind raced. The villagers could do nothing against these attackers. The ship was their only chance. But even the ship required him to act. Kale returned to the central chamber, his hands moving over consoles with purpose. He activated defensive systems, experimented with energy shields, and guided the drones into positions that maximized their effectiveness. The ship responded, adapting to his commands. But Kale knew the real test was coming. The aliens were not stopping, they were closing in, preparing to engage. The hours before the first encounter were tense and exhausting. Kale worked tirelessly, learning the limits of the ship, testing its capabilities, and preparing for battle. He discovered hidden weapons systems, energy projectors, and propulsion units that could be used to maneuver the vessel. Each discovery was a small victory, a demonstration of human perseverance and ingenuity. Finally, the alien fleet entered the atmosphere, small ships darting toward the vessel with alarming speed. Kale's heart raced, but he did not panic. He gave commands to the drones, directing them in complex patterns to intercept the attackers. The energy shields flared to life, glowing brightly as the first impact struck. Kale moved like a conductor, guiding the ship and its defenses with a combination of instinct, logic, and creativity. The aliens were relentless, their ships designed for speed and aggression, but they had not anticipated human ingenuity. Kale exploited gaps in their formations, using the environment and the ship's technology in ways no machine could predict alone. The drones moved with precision, intercepting attacks, disabling smaller ships, and protecting the vessel. Each action Kale took shifted the balance in their favor. A demonstration of human resourcefulness under pressure. Hours passed in a blur of movement, lights, and energy. The alien fleet began to retreat, realizing that their opponent was unlike any they had faced. Kale's mind burned with exhaustion, but he remained focused, guiding the vessel through evasive maneuvers and defensive strategies. Finally, the last of the attackers fled into the void, leaving the ship battered but intact. Kale collapsed onto the floor of the central chamber, breathing heavily. The lanterns outside glowed softly, as if congratulating him. The ship hummed around him, a living presence, acknowledging his efforts. He had faced the unknown, overcome impossible odds, and proven that human courage, intelligence, and adaptability could rise to meet challenges far beyond expectation. As he looked around, Kale realized how much he had learned. The ship was more than a machine, it was a partner, a teacher, and a guardian. And the universe was larger, stranger, and more full of opportunity than he had ever imagined. He knew this was only the beginning. Beyond the horizon, beyond the orbit of the planet, lay worlds to explore, mysteries to uncover, and challenges that only humans could meet with their unique combination of creativity and courage. Night fell again, and the twin moons cast their silver glow across the cliffs and the quiet waves. The villagers watched from a distance, still wary but no longer afraid. They had glimpsed the power of human ingenuity and the bond between KL and the ancient vessel. They understood, in their own way, that humanity could rise to meet dangers and opportunities alike, and that courage and cleverness could illuminate even the darkest night. Kale stood at the observation deck, gazing at the stars beyond the ship. His body ached, his mind raced, but his spirit burned with determination. The old vessel had chosen him, and he had proven worthy, but he knew the universe was vast, and other challenges awaited. He would face them, as he had faced this one, with courage, intelligence, and the unyielding human drive to explore, learn, and triumph. The lanterns of the ship burned on, steady and bright, guiding him forward, and deep inside, the vessel's hum spoke once more. Not in words, but in feeling. Trust, partnership, and the promise of adventure yet to come. Kale smiled, ready to step into the next chapter of this extraordinary journey. The night after the battle was unusually calm. The waves rolled gently against the sand, the winds softened to a quiet breath, and the twin moons cast long silver paths across the water. But inside Kale's mind, nothing was calm. Sleep refused to come to him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of the alien ships, the glowing shields, the drones racing past him, and the feeling of danger that had filled the air. He sat alone on the deck of the old vessel, his back resting against the railing. The lanterns beside him glowed with a warm, steady light, almost comforting, like the ship itself was watching over him. But Kale knew this peace would not last. The aliens had not come by accident. They had followed a signal, one the ship had sent the moment Kale awakened its systems. And if one group had found it, others could too. Kale rose, stretching his aching muscles. The ship hummed softly under his feet, as if aware of his thoughts. He placed a hand on the nearest lantern, feeling its strange warmth, and whispered, "What have I started?" The lantern flickered gently, as if responding. A soft voice echoed faintly in the air. Not through speakers, not through metal, but through the ship itself. Choices awaken paths. Fear does not change them. Prepare, Kale. Kale took a deep breath. The ship was right. Running would not help. Hiding would not protect anyone. And fear would only slow him down. He had been chosen by this vessel, not because he was the strongest or most skilled, but because he was willing to try, willing to learn, willing to rise when others stepped back. With renewed resolve, Kale moved to the central chamber. The holographic map floated above the console, its stars shimmering like diamonds in the dark. He studied it carefully, trying to understand what kind of danger might be coming. The alien fleet from earlier was only a small group. Their attacks had been aggressive but uncoordinated, almost like scouts testing the waters. That meant something larger could be waiting. As Kale ran his hand across the map, a cluster of red symbols appeared at the edge of the projection. They pulsed faintly, indicating movement. His heart tightened. That cluster was far larger than the group that had attacked earlier. The ships were moving slowly but surely toward the planet. They were not rushing, they were planning, preparing. And they were coming straight for the vessel. Kale felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He needed help. The villagers had seen some of the battle from afar. They would know something was wrong. But he also knew they were frightened. This was all too strange, too overwhelming for people who lived simple, quiet lives. Still, Kale had no choice. If they did not work together, the village, and possibly the entire planet, would be in danger. He left the ship and made his way toward the village, where a small crowd had gathered around a fire. People whispered nervously, glancing at the glowing vessel on the shore. When Kale approached, the murmurs grew louder. Some stepped back in fear. Others stared with wide, uncertain eyes. "It spoke to you, didn't it?" an older villager asked. "That..." Kale nodded. "It's more than a ship. It's alive in its own way. And it's dangerous only if we ignore what's coming." "What do you mean?" a young woman asked, her voice trembling. Kale took a deep breath and explained everything: how he had awakened the ship, how the aliens had attacked, how he fought them off using the vessel's systems, and how a larger force was now approaching. The villagers listened in stunned silence, their faces flickering in the firelight. When Kale finished, no one spoke for several seconds. Finally, the village leader stepped forward. He was a strong, calm man named Torin, respected by everyone for his fairness. "Kale," he said slowly, "why should we trust this ship? Why should we involve ourselves in something far beyond our world?" "Ask, because we're already involved," Kale replied firmly. "The signal went out. The aliens are coming whether we like it or not. If we don't prepare, we'll be defenseless. But if we work together, we have a chance." Torin studied Kale for a long moment, then nodded. "You've always had a mind for machines. If anyone can lead us through this, it's you." A ripple of relief washed through the villagers. They gathered around Kale, asking questions, offering help, and promising to stand with him. For the first time since the ship arrived, Kale felt a spark of hope. Humans were not the most advanced species in the universe, but they had something far stronger: courage, loyalty, and the will to fight for their future. Together, Kale and the villagers returned to the ship. The vessel hummed softly as they approached, its lanterns glowing brighter, almost as if greeting them. Kale guided them inside, showing them the observation decks, defense systems, and communication stations. Their faces lit up with a mix of fear and amazement. Over the next few days, the village transformed. People worked tirelessly, building barriers along the shore, gathering supplies, and preparing hiding spaces for children and the elderly. Inside the ship, Kale taught a small group of villagers how to operate simple consoles, monitor sensors, and assist with drone guidance. It was hard work, exhausting work. But Kale felt more alive than ever. The ship seemed to sense their efforts, offering small bursts of guidance through soft pulses of light and gentle hums. Every success made the villagers more confident, and every challenge made them more determined. But the danger grew closer. The cluster of red symbols on the map drifted steadily toward the planet. The alien fleet was vast, its numbers overwhelming. Kale studied their movement patterns carefully. They were organized, disciplined, and clearly more advanced than the smaller group that had attacked earlier. This was not a scouting party, this was an invasion force. Late one afternoon, while Kale was analyzing the fleet's approach, the ship suddenly pulsed with a sharp, urgent vibration. A warning flashed across the console. The aliens had reached the outer edge of the atmosphere. They were coming faster than expected. Kale called the villagers together. They gathered inside the central chamber, their faces pale but resolute. "They're coming," Kale told them. "And this time, it won't be a small fight. But we have something they don't expect. We think differently. We adapt. We find answers where others see problems." The villagers nodded, gripping tools, devices, and anything else that might help. The ship rumbled. Outside, the sky darkened as the first alien vessels entered the clouds. They were larger than before, sleek and sharp, their hulls glowing faintly with energy. They moved with chilling precision, scanning every inch of the shore. Kale sprang into action. He ordered drones into position, activated the shields, and guided the villagers to their stations. The ship responded smoothly, its systems flowing together like a living organism. Then the first shot was fired. A beam of bright energy streaked across the sky, striking the shield with a violent flash. The ship trembled, but the shield held. Kale adjusted the power flow, reinforcing the barrier. The aliens attacked in waves, circling the ship, firing relentlessly. But Kale had studied their patterns. He recognized moments where their formation opened. Small weaknesses they didn't expect anyone to see. He directed drones to strike precisely at those points. The drones moved swiftly, dodging enemy fire, disabling ships, and returning to the vessel for repairs. The villagers cheered each time an alien ship fell into the sea or spun out of control. Hours passed. Smoke drifted across the battlefield, lights flashed across the sky, and the ship hummed under the strain. Kale worked tirelessly, guiding every movement, every shield adjustment, every drone attack. His hands flew across the consoles, sweat dripping down his face, but he refused to slow down. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a battle for their world, their future, and everything humans stood for. Finally, the alien fleet faltered. Their attacks weakened, their formation broke, and one by one, they retreated into the clouds. A final blast from the ship's main energy projector sent the last enemy vessel spiraling into the ocean. The fighting stopped. Silence settled over the shore. Slowly, villagers emerged from their positions, their expressions shifting from fear to disbelief to joy. KL stood in the central chamber, breathing hard. His hands trembled from exhaustion, but his eyes shone with victory. Humanity had done it. They had stood against a force far greater than themselves, and won. He looked at the holographic map. The red symbols were fading, retreating. For now, they were safe. But Kale knew this was only temporary. There were countless stars in the sky, countless civilizations, and countless threats. But he also knew something else: humans were capable of facing them. Together, Kyle placed his hand on the console. The ship pulsed gently, almost proudly. Its lanterns glowed with warm golden light, reflecting across the waves like small suns. The villagers cheered outside, their voices rising in celebration. They had fought with bravery, intelligence, and unity, and they had proven that, even in a universe full of powerful races, humans could stand tall. Kale watched them with a smile. He felt tired, but he also felt something deeper: hope, pride, and the thrilling knowledge that the journey was far from over. And as the lanterns burned through the night, Kale sensed that the ship agreed. The real adventure was only beginning. The stars stretched endlessly across the sky, sparkling like distant fires over the vast oceans and cliffs of Kale's home planet. The old vessel rested gently on the shore, its lanterns glowing softly, a steady golden light reflecting off the water. Kale stood at the observation deck, watching the horizon, his mind alive with thoughts of the past battles, discoveries, and the strange intelligence that guided the ship. The events of the previous day replayed in his mind: the alien attackers, the drones, the systems he had learned to operate. He knew the universe held far more challenges than any one human could face alone. The first hint of movement came from the sky. A fleet of alien vessels, larger and more numerous than the last, appeared above the horizon. Their sleek forms glimmered in the moonlight as they descended toward the planet, moving with calculated precision. Kale's heart pounded. He had anticipated more threats, but the size and speed of this fleet were overwhelming. The villagers, alerted by the ship's lights, had gathered at a safe distance, murmuring anxiously among themselves. Fear was visible in their eyes, yet they trusted Kale, because he had proven himself before. Kale moved quickly through the corridors of the vessel, activating the defensive systems and calling the drones into formation. The ship responded instantly, humming with energy and power. Panels slid open, revealing energy projectors, defensive shields, and other mechanisms Kale had not fully explored before. He realized that the old vessel had been built not just to travel, but to protect itself and those it chose to trust. He had to become its commander, its strategist, and its protector. The alien ships approached, their weapons glowing with energy. Kale studied their formations, noticing patterns and weaknesses that no machine alone could detect. He gave orders to the drones, sending them into the sky to intercept smaller attackers, while he prepared the ship's defensive shields for the first assault. The battle began with a flash of light, a surge of energy that rippled across the atmosphere. The shields held, humming and vibrating as they absorbed the first strikes, while Kale guided the vessel with careful precision. The villagers watched in awe from the cliffs, seeing flashes of light streak across the sky. They could not understand the technology, but they understood courage. Kale's leadership, calm determination, and clever use of the ship's systems were enough to give them hope. They whispered to one another that humans, even simple villagers, could rise to meet threats that seemed impossible. Kale focused, moving from console to console, giving precise instructions, activating energy projectors, and coordinating the drones. He realized that the aliens were testing him, probing for weaknesses, and adapting to his strategies. But Kale adapted faster. He used the environment to his advantage, sending waves of energy that reflected off the water, creating blinding flashes and confusion among the attackers. The drones moved with perfect timing, intercepting missiles, disabling engines, and protecting the vessel. Hours passed in a blur of action. Kale's mind was sharp, his reflexes quick, and his strategies fluid. He discovered that by combining the ship's energy projectors with the drone's precision, he could create temporary barriers and traps, forcing the alien fleet into positions that favored him. The aliens were technologically advanced, but they lacked creativity. They had not faced a being capable of using intuition, logic, and imagination to exploit the smallest openings. That being was Kale. The battle reached its peak as the largest of the alien ships engaged directly. It fired beams of energy that struck the shields with incredible force, shaking the vessel and throwing Kale off balance. He held on to the console, analyzing patterns, calculating timing, and making split-second decisions. He realized that the alien ship's energy system was synchronized, creating moments of vulnerability between each strike. Kale gave a command to the drones, guiding them in a precise formation that exploited these moments. A coordinated strike from both the drones and the ship's energy projectors hit the alien vessel simultaneously, disabling its shields and engines. The alien ship spiraled out of control, crashing into the ocean with a massive explosion. Kale exhaled, feeling a surge of triumph and relief. But he knew this was only one ship. The fleet still hovered above, watching, recalculating. He had to act quickly to ensure victory. He called all available drones into a unified formation, creating a network of sensors and weapons that could respond instantly to any attack. The ship's defensive shields glowed brighter, forming a dome of energy that covered the vessel completely. Kale felt a deep connection to the old vessel, as if it were alive and thinking with him. He realized that it was not just a machine, it was a partner, an ally, and a teacher. Every system he had learned to use, every decision he had made, had been guided subtly by the ship's intelligence. The bond between them was strong, and it allowed him to anticipate threats and respond with speed and precision that no alien technology could match. The final wave of alien ships attacked, moving in unison as if guided by a single mind. Kale stayed calm, his mind sharp and focused. He directed the drones to intercept and disable the smaller ships, while maneuvering the vessel to create blind spots in the enemy formation. The energy projectors fired in carefully timed bursts, striking weak points in the alien shields. One by one, the ships faltered, engines failing, weapons disabled, until the remaining vessels retreated, disappearing into the void. Kale collapsed onto the floor of the central chamber, breathing heavily. The ship hummed softly around him, the lanterns glowing warmly, and the atmosphere inside the vessel was calm, almost serene. The battle was over. The humans had survived. And more than that, they had triumphed. Kale's courage, ingenuity, and determination had allowed them to face overwhelming odds and emerge victorious. Outside, the villagers cheered from the cliffs, their voices carrying across the water. They had witnessed a display of bravery and cleverness that went beyond their understanding. To them, Kale represented the best of humanity: courage in the face of danger, intelligence to solve impossible problems, and the unyielding spirit to never give up. Kale rose slowly, his body tired but his mind alert. He knew the victory was not just for himself, but for all of humanity. The ship's systems were still operational, and Kale realized that it could now take them beyond the planet, beyond the stars, to explore the universe and uncover secrets that had been hidden for centuries. He walked to the observation deck, looking up at the night sky filled with stars. Each one seemed to pulse with possibility, and Kale felt a thrill of anticipation for the adventures to come. The villagers approached cautiously, bringing supplies and helping Kale with repairs. Together, they worked to restore the ship. Guided by his knowledge and the ship's subtle intelligence, they learned from him, discovering that even ordinary humans, when united and clever, could achieve extraordinary things. Kale felt proud, not just of his own accomplishments, but of the people around him who had shown courage and trust in the face of the unknown. As the days passed, Kale explored the ship further, unlocking more of its systems and capabilities. He discovered a navigation system that could map the stars in real time, energy reserves that could sustain travel across vast distances, and archives of civilizations long forgotten. Each discovery reinforced the idea that humans were capable of great things when curiosity, courage, and intelligence were combined. Kale knew that the universe was vast and full of challenges, but he was ready. He had faced hostile forces, navigated alien technology, and learned to work in harmony with a vessel far beyond human design. The ship's lanterns burned bright, not only as a signal but as a symbol of human resilience, ingenuity, and determination. They were proof that humans could rise to any challenge, overcome impossible odds, and emerge victorious. One evening, as the twin moons rose again over the horizon, Kale stood at the deck, looking at the stars. The ship hummed softly, and he felt the presence of its intelligence, guiding him, encouraging him. He knew that this was only the beginning. The universe awaited, with mysteries, dangers, and wonders that no human had ever seen. But he also knew that humanity, with its courage, creativity, and determination, could meet whatever lay ahead. The waves crashed gently against the shore, and the wind whispered through the sails and rigging of the old vessel. The lanterns glowed steadily, casting golden light across the sand and water. Kale felt a sense of peace, knowing that humans had proven themselves capable of rising to challenges that no one else might dare face. The ship was alive, the universe was vast, and humanity had shown that it could not be ignored. Kale turned to the villagers, who had gathered on the cliffs once more. Their eyes shone with awe and admiration. He smiled at them, knowing that their courage and trust had played a part in this victory. Together, humans had faced an extraordinary challenge and triumphed. He felt a sense of pride not just in himself, but in all of humanity. The old vessel had drifted ashore at midnight, with its lanterns still glowing bright. It had brought mystery, knowledge, and challenge, and it had allowed humans to prove their worth. Now, as the ship prepared for new journeys across the stars, Kale felt ready to lead, to explore, and to continue the legacy of courage, ingenuity, and determination that defined humanity. The night sky stretched endlessly, filled with stars that beckoned with adventure and promise. Kale knew that wherever they went, humans would rise to meet the challenges ahead. The vessel's lanterns burned brighter than ever, a beacon of hope, courage, and the enduring spirit of humanity. And with that, Kale stepped forward, ready to guide the old vessel into the cosmos, carrying the light of human ingenuity to the farthest reaches of the universe. The adventure was far from over. The universe was wide, full of wonder, and alive with possibilities. And humans, Kale realized, were ready for all of it.